You guys don't get this, but I get all the accolades for all the work that you do, and they so appreciate the lesson today is facing the giant, and it's coming from a familiar story of David and Goliath. This one we all know, and what I try to do when we have workshops like this is bring something from it, because I get so excited and worked up. But something I wanted to let you guys know about this particular workshop. It was very emotional for a lot of reasons, but it was a leadership workshop, and so Friday night was very challenging. But you have to understand that the people that they're inviting here, that are coming here, are largely the leaders of their congregations. And so we have preachers and their wives and elders and deacons. But Friday night was very convicting, very challenging. And the speaker even said that. But then yesterday, we broke out into these sessions and we worked through it. And wasn't it an amazing day for in here with the women? I only got to come in and sneak some pictures, but just very uplifting. And I use this analogy, I used it with you before, you're going to see it in our lesson today, that a lot of times in any field of study that we have, we like to get around, there's a pro camp. If it's sports or whatever field you're in, it could be music, could be sports, but we go to a coach's camp or coaches and they motivate us. But if you ever have the opportunity to get around the pros, right, it just accelerates your learning because they've been at this a long time. They could save us a lot of heartache with their experience, but we still gotta live it. And sometimes we think, like Hugh always says, he plugs our Kent retreat, but there's nothing like a retreat, because then you don't just get the lessons, but you get the fellowship around it. We stay up late, and unfortunately, I get to do it. I hang out with Speedy and Nancy and a couple others, and we just get to debrief after, and that's fellowship. It's so wonderful. Again, we have this great Bible study in the morning, and it really kind of sets the tone. And we're in Genesis, and we're looking at this story of Joseph, and it's a story of integrity, and it's an example for us. And the whole workshop is about character. Our character matters. And so we're called to this glory. We were talking about it in our studies during the week. We mentioned last week, this peace, grace, and glory that we're all working out. And so there were a couple of lines I took a lot of notes, and Natalia was sitting with Natalia yesterday, and she's taking notes down, and we're sharing notes. And so I had to switch over to my tablet, and so I try to capture a lot of these things. But one of them, in the beginning, John Davis Marshall, our speaker, he said, the biggest room in my house, I don't know if some of the guys remember this, the biggest room in my house is the room for improvement. Remember that? Oh my goodness. Because sometimes we get around, people that are just so good. We want to be like them. We want good mentors and good leaders. And you're just like, oh, he's so good. But you realize it's like climbing a mountain, right? The higher up you go, the farther you can see. And you realize, well, I got a lot more I could learn. I didn't know that. When Alan read the Psalm this morning, these Psalms, of course, they're inspired by God. But I want you to think of this. We're talking about David this morning. And David is writing a lot of these Psalms, and where did the information come from? He's a shepherd boy, he's out in the field, but he's not wasting his time at his job. He's learning and preparing always. for what we don't know, but we find out. We find out. God has a purpose for us in our life. And we're all going to face a giant. And like Hugh said this morning, you're either in a storm, you're coming out of a storm, or you're headed right for one. Right? That's life. And so we take these opportunities. David's a shepherd boy, and he's considering the heavens, and he writes these lovely psalms. And what are they? He's considering. He's looking at the heavens, and he's saying, oh my goodness, there's a reason for all of this. And so I know we know the story of David and Goliath, and it's out of 1 Samuel 17. In fact, I have the heading, David and Goliath. And so, in my mind, I always we tend to do this, I kind of tune out, I know that story, David and Goliath, everybody knows that story. My impression of David and Goliath was always that David, this little, he's called the ruddy shepherd boy. And, from Vacation Bible School or wherever, you may have heard these lessons when you're younger, is that, well, God just gave David this ability, and he just shows up one day and defeats the giant. And it was just all God. And so I want us to take a little closer look. Also, this is the season right now. We're in this season where schools are coming to an end. And what does that mean? Graduation is coming. Well, before graduation, there's something a little more distressing. Exams. And we have to... Exams are a time for us to demonstrate that we were paying attention, that we learned the material, and we have to take an examination. But application comes when we get to demonstrate we know how to use what we learn. And that's why we're here. That's why we come together, is to have fellowship, to praise our God, but to grow. We're always exhorted to grow. So from our text, David and Goliath, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 45, I just pulled those verses out, 45 through 47, because, well, let me read it again. And I'm going to read it from this English Standard Version. 45 says, "Then David said to the Philistine," and okay, you've seen this before. You've seen this. You've seen it in various ways. But here's one of these differences between men and women that is so prevalent here with David. David says what he says because the Philistine, this giant of Gath, Goliath, right? You got to picture the scene. You have Israel's on one mountain and the Philistines are on the other mountain. There's a valley in the middle. And Israel is not ready for this. They're not. They're terrified. Because Goliath keeps coming down into the valley and he's tormenting them. And basically this giant who's, shield and sword and javelin, and most people can't even pick him up. And by the way, remember we said when they picked Saul as king, you know what was different about Saul? He was head and shoulders above all the other Israelites. Just to give you an idea, Israel, they're not the biggest tribe out there, but the Philistines are pretty big, and here comes this giant, and not only is he big, but his equipment is big. He could hurt you just looking at you. He comes down into the valley and he taunts Israel. And basically what he's saying is, listen, if you send one of your fighters to fight me, if you defeat me, we'll be your slaves. But if I defeat you, then you're going to be our slaves. And
that's his taunt. And he's really ridiculing Israel, because he knows there's nobody on Israel's side that wants to go and step into that arena. But as guys, we know this. We get out on the courtyard, we do it in, whether it's sports or whatever, and we call it smack talk, right? And so here's Goliath, and he's smack talking. Well, he can back it up too. And here's this David, he's this ruddy guy, and he gives it right back to him. And that's what we see. And remember from our vacation Bible school or whatever, it's like David's just this little shepherd boy, and he's got his pouch and, his slingshot and everything. And, David says, verse 45, to the Philistine, "You come with a sword and with a spear and a javelin, but I come in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day," verse 46, "this day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the hosts of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And that all the assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." So basically, if you read the story, David just repeats back what the Philistines said. But when you read up to this, what had happened was David, so go back to chapter 14, the last verse of chapter 14. I just want you to see this character of Saul. Remember, in our progression here, Saul was anointed king. Saul was doing pretty good, but then his downfall was he doesn't wait for Samuel. The people are getting antsy and they're starting to leave. And so Saul takes on Samuel's job and he sacrifices an animal. And then Samuel shows up and said, no. You need to. He said, if you would have just followed God, you'd have been king forever over Israel. But no, you don't listen. He says obedience is better than sacrifice. But Saul, remember when he was picked, when Samuel picked him as king, they couldn't find him and he was hiding? Here's this, humble young man. But as he grows and he has the Spirit of God in him to go and just like the judges, right, to protect Israel from their enemies. At the end of chapter 14, we get a little insight into Saul. Verse 52, there was a hard fighting against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul, watch this, when Saul saw any strong man or any valiant man, he attached himself to him. So in other words, Saul was always seeking out those people. Well, if you're a leader, right, and you're going out on campaigns and stuff, you want able bodies around you. But I think it was more than that too, as Saul was told that he was going to be replaced. Now he doesn't know it's David, but for a couple of reasons. Remember when Samuel left him, finally, he was afraid. God says, you got to go back and anoint David as king. And Samuel was afraid of Saul. He says, that Saul's going to kill me. That's how powerful Saul had become. And Saul, so what he does is he attracts these mighty warriors to him, both to win the campaigns, but I think also to kind of protect him. It's like his private guard, right? So it's good to know that, because when David now, David is anointed as king, and now Saul, it says that the Spirit leaves Saul, but then God sends him the Spirit to torment him. And remember that? This tormenting spirit, the way Saul was comforted is somebody had to play some kind of music for him to kind of charm the spirit away. And guess what? they said, hey, there's this David, this shepherd boy, maybe a starry-eyed kid. You know, the ones that write these psalms about, hey, I'm considering the heavens. And he could do this. But, you know, when they present him, that's not what they say. So they're all afraid of. Oh wait, yeah, I should have marked that verse down. I apologize, I didn't mark that verse down. It was why did Saul pick David? It wasn't just because he could play. It was because David was a mighty warrior. He was a valiant man. He had the qualities, even though he was a ruddy boy, he had these qualities that Saul admired. And when he comes into Saul's service, Saul loves him. And he takes him in. But here's something you need to know. David, as he's in the service of Saul, he's still going back and taking care of his father's flocks. And the other boys, remember the three older boys, because they all came when Jesse's sons were presented. The three older ones, they were already conscripted by Saul. And so they're already. So when David comes in, they're all fearing Goliath. His brothers are there, and it's kind of like the Joseph story, right? So here comes David, and they're all murmuring about this Goliath who's defying them. And David comes up and he says, so what of it? And basically he pulls one of these moves. Man up, which is how Saul began. Remember Saul said, man up. Why are you guys cowering? God's on our side. He'll. And David's like full of this energy, and they're telling him, you quiet down. Who are you, ruddy boy? Well, his talk finds Saul's ear. And he goes before Saul. He says in verse 12, this is 1 Samuel 17:12. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, named Jesse, who had 8 sons in the days of Saul. The man was already old and advanced in years. 3 of the oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to battle. The names of these 3 were Eliab, the firstborn, and then Abinadab, and then Shema. But David, verse 14, David was the youngest. The 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistines came forward and took his stand morning and evening. And Jesse said to David, so take, does this sound familiar? We were just reading this in Joseph. Jesse says, David, go, take care of your brothers, right? Take your brothers ephah of parched grain and these 10 loaves and carry them quickly to the camp of your brother. He said, also take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See if your brothers are well and bring some token from them. So again, verse 20, David rose early in the morning and he left the sheep with the keeper, took his provision. So here's where he goes. He comes into the camp and they're in fear. Verse 22, David left the things in charge of the keeper and he enters the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. And verse 23, as he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up with the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words, but this time David hears them, okay? And look at verse 24. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled and they were much afraid. They're like, oh, what do we do? And as the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who comes up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches and will give his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. And David said to the men who stood by, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is the uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Now you imagine the brothers don't like this. It sounds like already to them who are afraid, it sounds like he's talking smack, right? And the people say, well, it's going to be done the way that whoever kills him. And so Eliab, so verse 28, this is David's oldest brother. He heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil in your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Wise guy. Was it not but a word? And he turned away from him toward another, and he spoke the same way. And the people answered him again as before. And when the words of David were spoken, heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. So now Saul gets wind of this, that David's talking smack. And he says, well, bring him in. So, verse 32, David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go out and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are able to go up against this Philistine and fight with him? You are but a youth. He has been a man of war from his youth. What's Saul's attitude? You got no chance. You got no chance. And David's been soothing Saul's heart. This little singer and player, he's going to be our champion. Remember we said, don't judge a book by its cover? What did God say? I'm looking for a man with heart. Listen, verse 34. David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered him out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck and killed him. What was David doing out there? He was being prepared. 36, your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. You know, we say there's a storm coming, but there's a giant that we're going to face. Are we ready? David said in verse 37, for the Lord delivered me out of the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear. He'll deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, the Lord be with you. So what is it? So Saul loads him up, right, with his armor. And he's like, yeah, this is good stuff. Nah, this is not working. I'm not used to this. So he takes it all off, and what does he have? He's got his little shoulder bag, picks up some smooth stones, and he's got a sling in his hand. The stage was set Friday night, and here was the progression. Listen, because he was making a contrast, the speaker was making a contrast between the leadership of the world and the leadership of the church. And he says it goes like this, and everybody wrote this down Friday night. Belief, thought, feeling, behavior. You know, we say, when you set goals, I used to teach this, when you set goals, right, if those goals conflict with your belief system, then you're going to undermine it. If you don't know that. And his point was, like we always say, we need to be instructed. We need to be taught so we have the right belief system, because that will determine our thoughts. We let the world does the other way around. The world throws experiences at us. We think about it and we form our beliefs on the world, which is completely wrong. We're to reorient our thing, renew, right, our mind. So you guys know this. Let me reiterate this. You know this, again, it's another VBS, one of my favorites. Ephesians chapter 6, put on the full armor of God, right? And like I said, I know it as a kid. I think, oh yeah, I don't need any of that stuff because the Lord is with me, and He is. He says, this is Ephesians 6, 10 through 20. You know it really well, but listen how it applies here. Finally, be strong in the Lord, in the strength of His might. So you might say, well, okay, so I don't have to do anything. I'll just trust the Lord. And when the storm comes, he says, verse 11, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. I got Jesus. He'll fight my battle. You better put him on so you can stand. Verse 12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day when the storm comes, having done all to stand firm. Stand, therefore, having fastened on your belt of truth, put on the breastplate of righteousness, your shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace in all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, which can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit, with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. We're all on the same team. And also for me, that my words may be given to me in my opening of my mouth, boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that I may declare it boldly as I ought to speak. David comes up. It looks like talk. It looks like talk. But what did he say? I'll stand. I'm ready. I'm prepared. Now I know why God was preparing me by sending lions and bears in my way. I'm going to do this. And he goes down, and here's the scene. I love the scene. It's in these many different movies, but if you want the scene, it's Troy, the very beginning. That Achilles, he goes out there, and the giant is standing there. He's the champion, and he's going through all his motions. David just walks right out there, on his way out there, grabs a stone, slings him, plugs him in the head, and he falls down. I had a mentor in business. Derek would appreciate this. On the job site, my construction days, because we had a lot of big, muscle guys, that it's good. It's good to be in shape. It's good to be healthy. But if you're the ruddy guy, right, he used to say, I'll knock him out before he gets his muscles out of his shirt. That's the smack talk that guys talk. But here comes David, knocks him down, and he defeats him. So here's the lesson. Here's what we get. Verse 45, when David says, look, you come with sword and spear and javelin. Like the armor of God. It's a spiritual battle. We still need to be prepared for it. David was an able-bodied man, but he could stand. If you watch any kind of a championship game or any kind of thing, is people play better than they thought they could. Why is that? Because after you prepare real well, then it comes down to in a battle when we're kind of equally matched, the one who wins is the one who has the better mental stamina. So, number one, know the Lord. You've got to know the Lord. From verse 46, the Lord will deliver, and everyone will know that there's a God. You need to believe the Lord. He said battle belongs, I thought you were switching the song that battle belongs to the Lord. But the battle belongs to the Lord. But we need to know him, and we need to believe him. He's done everything to show us that. And then 47 is, the Lord saves not with sword and spear. The battle is the Lord's. See the salvation of the Lord. In every circumstance as we go through, we gain something and we get a little bit better. Trust the Lord. There's more than meets the eye. There are things people can't see. So we learn, we practice, we prepare. Paul put it this way to Timothy. In 1 Timothy 4:15 and 16, he says, practice these things. Practice. He said, how did these guys get, we get these speakers and we're, oh wow, it's incredible. How did they get so good? How did they, remember we had this guy at the Kent retreat and he's given us all the names of all these genealogies. And he says, I didn't say that to impress you. I told you those names because I know them, because I've studied every one of them, and probably has debated people about them. You know, he's familiar with them. Practice. Paul says, practice these things. He says, immerse yourself in them so that all may see your progress. Keep close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by doing so, you will save both yourself and your hearers. I said, that's why we come together so that we will know and understand how we can maybe at the right time affect the people in our sphere of influence when the time is right, because we're pretty good at when the time is wrong, trying to get them, right, Mary? We say they're not ready. I said the wrong thing, and now it's like, oh, they're not going to talk to me for a while. I'm somewhat a product of all these motivational speakers. And our speaker the other night, he mentioned Norman Vincent Peale. So a lot of us remember, these motivational speakers. But Norman Vincent Peale, and he said, he wasn't sure, and I didn't look it up, so I'm just going to go with what he said. It could have been somebody else, but I think he was right. Norman Vincent Peale, at the end of his life, he made this statement. He said, I need to apologize to God. I made a career out of teaching people leadership and never gave God the glory for the material. Remember I said, over the years as I was learning this stuff, I said, where are they getting this stuff? And when I found out it was here, I said, I'm going here. I want to go to the source. I didn't want it secondhand news. But he said, yeah, I should have done that. Listen, Jesus said in Matthew, Sermon on the Mount, 5:16, in the same way let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So we don't just prepare and do this for our benefit. It benefits us. But it helps those around us. And people need to know there's a God, Lord of all. There is a judgment. There is truth, God's truth. And so there's the story of David and Goliath. And we come together so that we can grow up and learn to stand firm when we face the giant. We have an invitation song if you have a need.